When I handed my son the keys to my shop office and told him he was ready to manage daily operations, he smiled, looked down at the keys in his palm, and said, "About time, old man." I laughed. I had been making excuses for that boy his entire life. That was 8 months ago. Last Tuesday, a loan officer from First Tennessee Bank called my cell while I was elbow deep in a transmission rebuild. She wanted to confirm the repayment schedule on a $180,000 business expansion loan taken out in March against Callaway Auto Body and Paint. I had never applied for any loan. The call ended. I straightened up, wiped my hands on a shop rag. The shop hummed around me, lifts rising, compressors cycling, the smell of paint and engine grease that had been the backdrop of my life for 31 years. I looked through the glass partition at my son sitting at my desk, his feet up, scrolling his phone. I did not go in there. I did not say a word. I set the rag down on the workbench and walked out the side door into the parking lot, stood in the October Tennessee air, and let myself feel the full weight of what that phone call meant. 63 years old, 31 years, building something from a 2-bay garage on the outskirts of Franklin into a 12-bay facility with a paint booth, a fleet account, and 22 employees. My wife Carol had done the bookkeeping for the first 11 years, before the cancer. After she passed, I did it myself. Every invoice, every payroll, every quarterly tax filing, my hands on everything. Then my son came back from his third failed venture in Atlanta, and I gave him a job. That was 2 years ago. I told myself it was temporary. Then I told myself it was character building. Then I started believing he had finally grown up. I went back inside, said nothing to him, drove home at the end of the day, and opened my filing cabinet. My personal records went back to 1993. Every bank statement, every business document, every contract I had ever signed lived in that cabinet. Carol had started the system. I had maintained it out of loyalty to her memory and plain old stubbornness. I pulled the business folder and started cross-referencing. The loan the bank officer mentioned had been taken out on March 14th. I found the document trail inside an hour, not in my filing cabinet, but in my business email account, which my son had been managing since January. He had set up a filter. Anything from First Tennessee Bank went directly to a subfolder I had never seen, buried under a label that read, Vendor Updates. The loan application carried my signature. I studied it for a long time under my desk lamp. That was not my signature. I closed the laptop, laced my fingers behind my head, and stared at the ceiling. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for 12 years, ever since Carol. I had raised my son alone after that, or tried to. He was 22 when she died, technically already grown, but grief does things to a family. It made me generous in ways I should have examined more carefully. I picked up a pen and a yellow legal pad and started writing. Not emotions, facts. Business administration access granted to my son. January of this year. First Tennessee loan, $180,000. March 14th. Forged signature. Funds deposited into a business account I did not recognize. I wrote down the account number from the loan documents. Then I opened my online banking on my personal laptop, the one my son did not have the password for, and started searching. The account the loan proceeds went into was registered to Callaway Auto Body and Paint, LLC, except the LLC had been restructured. In February, quietly, someone had filed an amendment with the Tennessee Secretary of State. The managing member had been changed from Raymond Callaway, sole proprietor, to Callaway Family Ventures, LLC, a holding company I had never created, registered 2 months prior, with 2 members listed, my son and his wife. I read that document 3 times. Then I pulled up the business checking account. I had given my son signature authority in January, believing he needed it to approve supply orders and handle vendor relationships while I focused on the shop floor. I had not reviewed the statements in 4 months. That was my failure, and I owned it. The withdrawals started in February. Small at first, 300 here, 800 there. Notations like equipment research and vendor outreach. Then larger, a $12,000 transfer in March to Callaway Family Ventures, LLC. Another $9,500 in April. By May, the transfers were happening twice a month. I added them up on my legal pad, then added the loan proceeds that had flowed through, then added what appeared to be diverted fleet account payments that should have posted to the main account. The number I wrote at the bottom of the page was $214,000. I sat back in my chair. The desk lamp made a small circle of light in the dark study. Carol's photo watched from the bookshelf. The one from our first year in the shop when we were 29 years old and terrified and certain we were going to make something. I looked at her for a moment. I am going to handle this, I told her photograph. Steady, like we always did. I opened a new page on the legal pad. Header. Action items. Call Sandra Howell. First thing in the morning. Remove son's signature authority from business accounts. Monday. Contact Secretary of State. Understand scope of LLC filing. Monday. Do not confront yet. Do not tip your hand. I had used Sandra for business contracts since 2009. She knew my company the way a good mechanic knows an engine. Every system. Every vulnerability. I called her at 7:30 the next morning before I left for the shop. She picked up on the second ring. An hour later, I was sitting across from her in her office on 5th Avenue South. She had her reading glasses on before I finished explaining. By the time I spread the documents across her desk, her expression had shifted from concern to the focused calm of someone shifting into professional mode. Raymond, this is business fraud. Potentially criminal. She tapped the LLC amendment with one finger. This filing used your business identity without authorization. The loan application with the forged signature is a federal matter. I need to undo it before I do anything else. Can we undo it? We can file to dissolve the fraudulent LLC and challenge the Secretary of State amendment. The forged signature on the loan document gives us strong grounds. She looked up. But Raymond, your son's name is on these filings. Do you understand what that means legally? I understood. I had understood since I sat at my desk the night before and stared at the ceiling. He chose to do this, I said. Whatever comes from it is his choice, not mine. Sandra studied my face. Then she nodded once and picked up her pen. I drove to the shop directly from her office. My son was already there, sitting in the office with a cup of coffee and his laptop. He looked up when I came in, gave me the easy smile that had been disarming me since he was 6 years old. Morning, Dad. Fleet account called about the Henderson renewal. I'll handle it. I walked past him to my workbench, put on my shop apron, and spent the next 4 hours doing what I had always done. Worked with my hands, diagnosed a failing CV joint on a Silverado, helped Marcus with a tricky quarter-panel blend on a Lexus, ran through the afternoon parts orders. My son stayed in the office. He always stayed in the office. At noon, I told him I needed him to handle a supplier meeting in Brentwood that afternoon. Made-up meeting. He left at 1 o'clock. I called my bank's business line from my office. Had the signature authority revoked by 2 o'clock. Called the fleet accounts directly and asked them to redirect payment confirmations to my personal email only, effective immediately, until further notice. Changed the passwords on every business account before 3. Then I called Greg Torres. I had met Greg 2 years earlier through the Franklin Chamber of Commerce. Forensic accountant, former IRS. The kind of precise, unhurried manner you wanted when accuracy mattered. I explained what I needed. A complete audit of Callaway Auto Body and Paint from January 1st of the current year through today. Every transaction. Every transfer. Where every dollar went. Can you start this week? I asked. He paused. This involves a family member? My son. Another pause. I can start Thursday. Good. I will have everything ready. That evening I went through the rest of it. The full history of what I had given my son since he came back to Franklin, laid out the same way I had laid out the salon numbers the night before. Just facts. Just figures. No sentiment. I had hired him at $55,000 a year, which was more than the position warranted, because he was my son, and I thought it would motivate him. I had co-signed the lease on the house he and his wife rented in Cool Springs because his credit was not strong enough on his own. 8 months of that lease ran $2,400 a month. which I had been quietly supplementing when he came up short. His health insurance ran through my business policy. I had bought out the remaining balance on his wife's car loan in the spring because he asked me to, and I had said yes without thinking twice. $41,000 in salary overage beyond what the role should have paid. $19,000 in housing support. $6,000 in car loan payoff. $11,000 in miscellaneous. A generator for the house after the ice storm, a dental procedure his wife needed, a vacation they had taken to Costa Rica that he had called a work trip for tax purposes, and I had let slide. $77,000 before the fraud. Add the $214,000 from the business account drains and the loan proceeds. I wrote the total at the bottom of the page. $291,000. I set down the pen, looked at the number, thought about the two-bay garage in 1993 and what that money would have meant then. The next Monday, I arrived at the shop at 6:30, 2 hours before my son usually came in. I unlocked the office, sat at my own desk, and worked through the account change confirmations. When my son arrived at 8:45, he walked past the front desk, where Marcus was checking the morning schedule, and came toward the office. He tried the handle. Locked. He looked through the glass at me. Knocked. I looked up, held up one finger, waited 30 seconds, then unlocked it. "Morning," he said. "Why's this locked?" "Habit." I gestured to the chair across the desk. "Sit down." He sat. His expression was still easy, still comfortable. He had not yet noticed that anything had changed. That told me how long he had believed himself untouchable. I slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was a summary page from the bank, showing the revocation of his signature authority. He looked at it. His face went still. "What is this?" "It is what it looks like, Dad." His voice shifted, tightened. "I was just trying to grow the business. The loan was for the new paint booth equipment. You have been talking about expanding for years. I was trying to move things forward. With my forged signature." The word forged landed like a dropped wrench. He went quiet. "I have a forensic accountant going through everything from January forward," I said. "I have a business attorney who has already begun the process of dissolving the unauthorized LLC filing and challenging the loan. I have copies of every transfer, every diverted payment, every document that was filed in my name without my knowledge. I want you to understand exactly where this stands before you say anything else." He said nothing. He just looked at me with an expression I had never seen on him before. Not guilt. Something older and colder than guilt. Calculation. "You would do this to your own son. You did this to your own father." We looked at each other across the desk I had worked at for 26 years. "I need you to clean out your personal items from this office today," I said. "Your employment here is terminated effective this morning. Marcus knows. I'll handle HR paperwork through Sandra's office. Your health insurance continues through the end of the month per Tennessee law. The house lease runs through January, at which point my name comes off the cosign and you will need to qualify independently." His jaw tightened. "You can't just." "I already did." He left without taking anything from the office. Just walked out through the shop floor, past Marcus and 2 other guys who found somewhere else to look, and out the side door. His wife called my cell phone 40 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. She called twice more before noon. I did not listen to the messages until that evening. The first one was confused and upset, asking what had happened, saying my son had come home and told her there had been some kind of misunderstanding. The second one was different. Her voice had shifted into something practiced and firm. "Raymond, you need to understand that Dylan was acting in the family's best interest. He has grounds to claim a partnership interest based on the work he has put in. We have spoken to an attorney." The third message, also from her, was left at 11:15 that night. This one was quieter. Just her voice, no performance in it. "Raymond, please. We are 3 months behind on the car payments, and the credit cards are maxed. We need this resolved. Please call us back." I set the phone down. Did not call back. Greg Torres delivered his preliminary findings on Friday afternoon. He sat across from me in the shop office with his laptop open and a printed summary in a manila folder. The total financial exposure from unauthorized transactions is $226,000, he said. That includes the loan proceeds, the LLC transfers, and what I've identified as diverted fleet account payments. He slid the folder across. Page 3 is the timeline. The pattern started within 3 weeks of him receiving signature authority. 3 weeks. He was methodical, Greg said. He started small to test whether you were reviewing the statements. When you weren't, the amounts increased. He paused. Your son knew your habits, Raymond. He knew you trusted him, and he knew you weren't checking. I took the folder. Thank you, Greg. How do you want to proceed? I have already spoken to Sandra. We are filing civil recovery on the fraudulent LLC and the loan. I am not pursuing criminal charges at this time. I want to be clear about that. But I am also not settling. I want every dollar documented. Greg nodded slowly. I'll prepare the full forensic report. Court-quality documentation. That's what I need. The week after Greg's report, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Brentwood. My son and his wife had retained an attorney. The letter claimed that my son had been operating as a de facto partner in Callaway Auto Body and Paint for the past 2 years based on his management role. His contributions to business development and verbal representations I had allegedly made regarding the future transfer of ownership. It demanded recognition of a 49% equity stake and immediate restoration of his employment with a formal partnership agreement. I read it twice, set it on Sandra's desk the next morning. She read it in about 4 minutes. Then she looked up with the expression of someone who has seen this particular play before. They have nothing, she said. Tennessee does not recognize de facto partnerships based on employment alone, and the criminal exposure on the LLC filing and the forged loan application gives them exactly 0 leverage to negotiate from. Their attorney knows this. Then why send it? To see if you'll blink. I won't, she smiled. No, I didn't think so. I'll respond Monday. It was around this time that things began shifting socially. I had been in the Franklin business community for over 30 years. My son, in the 2 years he had worked for me, had made himself visible. Chamber events, networking lunches, the kind of surface-level presence that looks like community engagement and is actually personal brand building. After I terminated him, he started talking. I heard about it through Marcus first. He came to me on a Wednesday morning with the careful expression of a man delivering bad news to someone he respected. Boss, he said, you should know. People are asking me things about what happened with Dylan. What are they asking? Whether you had some kind of breakdown, whether you turned on him for no reason. He paused. His wife posted something on Facebook. I didn't read the whole thing, but someone showed me a piece of it. I thanked Marcus and let it go for the moment, but I pulled up the post that evening at home. My son's wife had written it. She was a skilled writer. I had always known that. The post was measured and sad and carefully constructed to present my son as a hard-working young man who had devoted himself to his father's business only to be discarded the moment he suggested they formalize the arrangement. It mentioned that I had cut off his health insurance and removed him from the co-signed lease without warning. It did not mention the forged signature. It did not mention the $226,000. 312 people had reacted to it, most with hearts and supportive comments. Poor baby, someone had written. This is financial abuse of a different kind. I closed the browser, did not comment, did not call my son. The following Thursday was the Franklin Chamber of Commerce annual business recognition dinner. I had attended every year since 1997. This year I had a table for 4, sponsored the dessert service, and was being recognized for 30 years of consecutive membership. I had known about the dinner for months. I considered not going. Then I thought about 31 years of building something real, in this town, with these people. About Carol helping me stuff membership renewal envelopes at the kitchen table in 1994. About Marcus, who had worked for me for 19 years and whose son had just started his apprenticeship at a competing shop because I had not had an opening, a thing I intended to fix. I went. The Marriott Ballroom in Cool Springs was dressed the way it always was. Round tables with white linens, a podium, the low hum of a room full of people who had made something of themselves through ordinary persistent effort. I knew most faces. Several people gave me the particular careful nod of someone who has seen something online and is not sure what to believe. Brian Aldridge, who owned a landscaping company and had been my friend for 22 years, came to find me during cocktail hour. "Ray," he kept his voice low, "I saw what Stephanie posted. I want to hear your side. There's more to it than what she wrote." I figured. He met my eyes. A lot of people didn't. I know. The dinner proceeded. Salad, then chicken, or salmon. Speeches. The chamber president recognized this year's members. My 30-year acknowledgement came with a small plaque and a round of applause that felt genuine from most of the room and awkward from a few corners of it. Dessert was being set out when I saw them come in. Late. My son, in a jacket that was slightly too large for him now, the way clothes fit when someone has stopped eating properly. His wife beside him, composed, watchful. They had bought last-minute tickets, seated themselves at a side table near the back. I watched them from my peripheral vision. Did not turn to look directly. Continued my conversation with the woman next to me about the new mixed-use development going up on Main Street. My son made his move during the break between dessert and the closing remarks. He stood up, walked to the podium, tapped the microphone without asking permission. The room quieted by reflex. "I want to say something real quickly," he began. His voice carried the particular steadiness of someone who had rehearsed. "I know this is not the time or the place, and I apologize for that. But my father is here, and there are people in this room who have known us both for a long time, and I want to appeal to him directly." He looked at my table. "Dad, I made mistakes. Big ones. I am asking, publicly, because private hasn't worked, for a conversation. Just a conversation. We are family. That has to count for something." He extended his hand toward my table. The room went still. I had known this moment was coming. Not this exact room, not this exact night, but some version of it. My son had always preferred an audience. He had learned early that public vulnerability was harder for me to deflect than private confrontation. He was counting on the social weight of 200 witnesses to do what lawyers and threatening letters had not. I stood up, buttoned my jacket, walked to the podium. He held out the microphone. I took it, looked out at the room. "Thank you," I said. "I want to take this opportunity, since we're here together, and since a number of you have already heard one version of this story, to share the complete picture." Behind me, the AV technician Sandra had coordinated with earlier in the week brought the presentation up on the screen. I had emailed her the slides at 9 o'clock that morning. "My son and I founded nothing together," I said. "I founded Callaway Auto Body and Paint in 1993 with my wife Carol, who passed 12 years ago. I ran it alone for 19 years before my son joined the payroll 2 years ago as an operations manager. In those 2 years, I paid him $55,000 annually, co-signed his home lease, paid off his wife's car loan, and covered approximately $77,000 in various personal expenses because he was my son and I wanted to help him succeed." The screen showed a summary timeline. Dates, amounts, categories. In January of this year, I granted him signature authority on the business accounts. In February, he and his wife formed a holding company without my knowledge and filed documents with the Secretary of State, amending the ownership structure of my business. In March, someone submitted a loan application to First Tennessee Bank in my name with my forged signature and borrowed $180,000 against assets I built over 3 decades. The room had gone. The particular kind of quiet that happens when people are not just listening but recalibrating. A forensic accountant has documented $226,000 in unauthorized transfers and diverted payments between February and October of this year. I have retained legal counsel and filed to dissolve the fraudulent LLC. Civil recovery proceedings are underway. I looked at my son. He was standing 2 feet from me, not moving. "You asked for a conversation," I said. "That is the conversation. Those are the facts. I love you in the way a father cannot stop loving a son, but love is not the same as trust, and trust is not the same as surrender. What you did was not a mistake. Mistakes are accidents. What you did was a plan." I set the microphone back on the stand. I want to add one more thing, I said. 31 years ago, I started this business with a used floor jack and a lease I could barely afford. Carol and I believed that if you worked with honesty and precision, it would amount to something. This year, I have revised my estate planning, Callaway Auto Body and Paint, all 4 of its bays, its equipment, its accounts, and its goodwill, will pass upon my death to a vocational scholarship trust. Young people in Williamson County who want to learn a trade, automotive, HVAC, electrical, welding, will have access to tools, training, and tuition support that Carol and I never had starting out. I paused. My son will receive nothing from my estate. Not because I stopped loving him, but because he taught me what he was willing to do for money. I believe him. I walked back to my table. The applause came slowly at first, from my end of the room, then spread. By the time I sat down, most of the room was standing. I did not look at my son. I heard him and his wife move toward the exit, heard the murmur that followed them out. Brian Aldridge leaned over from the next table and put a hand briefly on my shoulder without saying anything. That was enough. The days after the dinner had their own particular texture. My son called twice, then stopped. His wife sent a text the following morning that said only, "I hope you're happy." I read it, set the phone down, went to work. Greg's final forensic report landed in Sandra's inbox the week after the dinner. 92 pages, itemized, court-ready. Their attorney filed a motion to dismiss the civil case the same week, citing insufficient evidence of fraudulent intent, claiming the LLC formation was a good-faith attempt to formalize an existing working partnership. Sandra's response was 40 pages and attached 63 exhibits. Their attorney withdrew from the case 2 weeks later. My son called one more time on a Wednesday evening in November. I was on my covered porch with a cup of coffee, watching the last light fade over the tree line behind my property. I let the phone ring, listened to it ring again. Then I picked it up. He spoke first. "Dad." His voice was stripped of everything that had been in it for years. The easy charm, the deflection, the practiced reasonableness. What was left sounded young. "I've lost everything. The house is gone. Stephanie left. I don't know what I'm supposed to do." I sat with that for a moment, felt the weight of it. 34 years since the hospital room where I first held him and believed, the way new fathers do, that the love I felt was a guarantee of something. "You built this," I said. "Every decision from February forward was yours." "I know. Then you also know how to start building something different." He was quiet. "I won't be part of it," I said. "I want to be clear about that. Whatever comes next for you, it does not include my business or my money or my name on any document. But you are 34 years old. That is not too old to start over from honest ground. I did it at 29 with $68 in the account and a wife who believed in me. You have more than I had." He said nothing else. After a moment, I heard the line go quiet, not hung up, just silent. I sat on the porch until dark fell. Did not feel triumphant. Did not feel the satisfaction I had imagined I might feel. Mostly I felt the absence of the weight I had been carrying since October. The particular lightness that comes when something necessary is finally finished. Sandra called the next morning with news. First Tennessee Bank had accepted the fraudulent loan dispute and was zeroing out the obligation from Callaway Auto Body and Paint's liability column. The Secretary of State filing had been successfully challenged and reversed. Callaway Family Ventures LLC had been administratively dissolved. The business was clean again. The vocational trust paperwork was filed the same week. I had worked with Sandra to establish a board of 3 people. Marcus, who had agreed after I explained the whole thing to him, over coffee, and watched him go from cautious to quietly moved. A representative from Tennessee College of Applied Technology in Nashville, and a retired shop teacher from Franklin High School named Donald Byers, who had been teaching kids to work on engines for 38 years and had the hands to prove it. First scholarships would be awarded in the spring. 2 students per year, full tool and equipment grants, tuition support for the 2-year program. Small start. Carol would have said, "Start small and do it right." I was standing at the workbench on a Friday morning in early December When Marcus came back from a test drive and leaned against the bay door the way he did when he had something on his mind. "My nephew," he said. "He is 17. Wants to learn bodywork, but his family cannot afford the program at TCAT." I looked at him. "Have him apply for the scholarship," I said. Marcus nodded, looked at the floor for a moment, then looked back at me. "You are a good man, Ray." I went back to the quarter panel I was working. The metal was honest under my hands the way it had always been. Press too hard in the wrong place and you create a new problem. Steady, pressure, patience, understanding where the damage actually started, not where it looked like it started. That was the work. It had always been the work. My phone sat on the bench. No messages from my son. No messages from his wife. Just the ordinary sounds of a shop running the way a shop was supposed to run. The rhythms of 31 years. The work that would outlast me and finally go to people who deserved it. Outside, December in Franklin was cold and clear. The kind of day Carol always called good working weather. I picked up my hammer, placed my dolly behind the panel, and began again.